Hi guys and welcome back to the Mighty Blues. My name is of course Cameron and welcome back today to another video. It is the game review, Everton 2, Tottenham Hotspur 2 at Goodison Park on Saturday afternoon. Another draw for Sean Dyche's Everton side. 3 on the spin in the Premier League now, of course. Aston Villa at Goodison, Fulham at Craven Cottage, and then Tottenham Hotspur at Goodison on Saturday. Another good performance. I thought we were well worth the point. In fact, I thought we probably deserved more out of the game, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I heard a lot of talk after the game from Ange Postecoglou and from a couple of Spurs players and Spurs fans who seem to have watched a completely different game of football to the one that I did at Goodison Park on Saturday, because they believed that Tottenham Hotspur deserved more from the game and all Everton had was lumped balls into the box and crosses from corners. Whilst the balls into the box may have been a very effective method for Everton on Saturday, I certainly don't think Tottenham done anywhere near enough to state that they deserve to win the game. In fact, other than the 2 goals that they scored, they never put Jordan Pickford under any pressure whatsoever. And in the first half, Everton, created enough space and had enough of the ball to get at least 2 or 3 goals. But unfortunately, we just lack that quality and we lack that confidence going forward at the moment. So, overall, generally, a draw what probably was a fair result, but I spoke yesterday in the player ratings and I spoke on Saturday in the instant match reaction about why I wasn't completely bouncing and over the moon with a point. And in hindsight, you sort of look at it and you think a point against a top 4 side, the side that have done fantastically so far this season, could potentially finish in a Champions League place come the end of it, will almost certainly finish in a European place of some form, and being able to get a point against that side with 2 of our biggest and most important players missing in Amadou Onana and Abdoulaye Doucoure is, by no means a poor result. And I know there was a lot of Evertonians that were happy with it. And, as I said, in hindsight, looking back, I probably... it probably is a decent result. It probably is a decent point to take, especially when you consider, as I said, all of those things. The fact that we are missing, certainly Abdoulaye Doucoure. I mean, Amadou Onana for me is a hugely important player for Everton, and I think his importance is played down often because of this thought that he won't be an Everton player in the next couple of years. So it's almost like we have to make excuses as to why he's not really important, when in reality he is really important. But Abdoulaye Doucoure is very clearly, arguably the most important player in this Everton setup. He's certainly been our only real consistent guide to goals this season, and without him in the team, you really do look around and think, who are we going to rely on to put the ball in the back of the net? And that is actually where my frustration came from on Saturday, because I felt like it was another game of football that just passed us by a little bit. And don't get me wrong, as I said, a point against the side that, currently sit inside of the top 4 and have had a really good season so far with a couple of our most important players out isn't by any sense of the imagination the worst result in the world. But it was a really, really poor Tottenham Hotspur performance. And like I said, if you're a Tottenham fan or a neutral watching that game and you think Tottenham deserved to win the game just because Everton scored a last-minute equaliser and just because, we caused the most threat by putting balls into the box, then I'm really not sure what to tell you about the game of football, because it really isn't for you. I mean, I'm seeing loads of headlines and loads of non-Everton or Tottenham fans talking about this game and saying things like Everton snatched the points. Now, I understand why it looks like that from the outside looking in. If you've not watched the game, you'll think, well, Everton have scored a 95th minute equaliser, so they have snatched the point. But the reality of the situation was very, very different. And as I said, I thought Tottenham were poor on Saturday. And it was a strong Tottenham side as well. The likes of James Maddison in there, the likes of Brennan Johnson in there. Obviously, Richarlison started, as we know. Timo Werner, they brought Kulusevski off the pitch. Barring, Son and maybe a couple of other players, they had a pretty strong side out there. And I don't think they offered much whatsoever. And that's where my frustration comes a little bit, because I think there's been a couple of games this season in which Everton have taken points from, and we've come out of them and said, oh, do you know what? That's not a bad point. That's not a bad result. But in reality, when you look at the game and you look at the opposition's performance, they're there for the taking, and Everton haven't been able to exploit that. And that is my biggest sort of worry at the moment with Everton Football Club. Is it's all well and good getting a good point against the top four side, but like I said last week when we drew with Fulham, for the Fulham result to have been considered a decent point, we have to start winning games of football at Goodison Park. Everton's biggest, or certainly Sean Dyche's biggest accomplishment for me in his time at Everton Football Club so far is being able to turn our away form around. Away from home now, we are an absolute, completely different side to the side that we were 12 months ago. In fact, I don't think we've been this comfortable and suited to going away from home and putting performances in and winning games for a long, long, long time. Maybe even, since Carlo Ancelotti's, first season, COVID season, and even that was a bit of a weird time, wasn't it? So prior to that, you're looking back to sort of Roberto Martinez's first season and then David Moyes' his time at the football club before you find a period in the club's history where we've been able to consistently go away from home, put performances in, week out, and come away with big results. And to be fair to Sean Dyche, he's sorted that out, and he sorted that out fairly quickly. However, the flip side of that is our home form is as bad now as it's ever been in my lifetime. I think we've won 3 games of football at Goodison Park all season in the Premier League, which is just absolutely disgraceful. And you think of some of the games we've lost this season and some of the performances Everton have put in and still come away, defeated. It's not being good enough. And I know a lot of people will say, well, in a lot of those games, Cam, we dominated and we battered teams, but we just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, and that's not the manager's fault. I get that. I get all of that. But the reality is, the very black and white of the situation is, away from home, we've been very good this season. At Goodison Park, we've been absolutely terrible. It's usually the other way around. It's usually we're fairly consistent at Goodison, but away from home, we're pretty useless, i.e. 2 away wins in the entirety of last season, 2 away wins in the entirety of the season before. But that was my worry after the Fulham game. A lot of people sat down after the Fulham game and said, that's a decent point, take that, that's a really good point. I felt like it was a missed opportunity. Don't get me wrong, Fulham had a number of opportunities on that night as well, but the reality is we had the best chance of the game with a couple of minutes to go. And had we have won that game, it takes a little bit of pressure off the Spurs game. It takes a little bit of intensity away from the Spurs game because we've gone away and we've won and we've picked up the 3 points. We didn't win that game, and therefore, for me, the Spurs game was not necessarily a must-win because we were playing a side inside the top 4 with a couple of key players injured, but it was certainly a game that Everton had to go out with the intention to win, or certainly with the confidence that we could win. And again, it felt like to me on Saturday like it was another missed opportunity, but not a missed opportunity because the manager made a disgraceful decision or because the players missed 15 clear chances and 15 big opportunities. Just again, coming up against sides who are not at the races and are not playing at their best and are not necessarily on the ball and not being able to expose them for that. And that is my biggest worry, because I don't really look at any of the sort of bottomish sides that Everton are battling with at the moment and think that they are better than Everton player for player. I don't. I look at Burnley and I think Everton are a much better, much more comfortable side than Burnley are. Same with Sheffield United. Even Luton, and I know Luton are doing brilliantly well at the moment, but I even look at Luton and think, do you know what? Player for player, I know they've beaten us twice, but Everton have got a better squad than what Luton have got. Palace, Brentford, Forest. But what I think about with those teams is I've watched a number of those sides, maybe not Sheffield United and Burnley, but I've watched a number of those sides who have exposed teams in big games when those teams that they've been playing haven't been at their best, and they've managed to come away with some big wins and some big points on the board. Luton won 3 on the bounce a couple of weeks ago because they were able to exploit opposition teams not putting in good performances, and that for me is what is slightly worrying, because I just don't think Everton have got the capability going forward to do that at the moment. And the sooner we get somebody like Abdoulaye Doucoure back in the side, the better, because we are absolutely in need. We are absolutely in need because he seems to be the only player in this squad that is capable of consistently putting the ball in the back of the net. And I suppose that's Everton's biggest on-field issue at the moment. You know, we can talk about home form, we can talk about away form, we can talk about substitutions, we can talk about individual players, but when you boil it down, the biggest issue with the football club at the moment is we can't put the ball in the back of the net. And that has been an issue at Everton for quite some time. And every season, we've always seemed to have had one player that has dug us out of it. Certainly over the last couple of years. Last year, it was Dwight McNeil. He got his head down, he worked hard, and in the second half of the season, he was absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic, and he kept Everton up with his goals. Abdoulaye Doucoure chipped in so far this season. It's been Abdoulaye Doucoure. He's looked like the only player who's capable of putting the ball in the back of the net at times. Season before, it was Richarlison who was able to, get his head down and score some really important goals to keep us up. And I just look at this current squad without Abdoulaye Doucoure and think, who is that player? Who is that player that you look at and you think he will be in the right place at the right time? And we just haven't got that at the moment. We're in February now. The January transfer window has been and gone. We didn't sign anybody. We know the reasons why we didn't sign anybody, and I'm not going to sit here and overly criticise the club for that, because we were told on day one we're probably not going to sign anybody. We were told in the middle of the month, we were told at the end of the month we're probably not going to sign anybody, and we didn't sign anybody. That's fine. However, that means that somebody has got to step up within the team, because our ability to put the ball in the back of the net and create big opportunities at the moment is nowhere near good enough. Defensively, we're absolutely sound. We've had 8 clean sheets this season, top of the clean sheets. Jordan Pickford is in the Premier League, and that just tells you how good we've been defensively, how strong Tarkowski and Branthwaite have been as a partnership, how much more improved Mikalenko has been, and obviously how solid Jordan Pickford has been in the midfield. I don't think there's any big issues. I think we've got hard workers there. I think we've got players with a bit of quality. We haven't necessarily got anybody that can create anything or drive with the ball or run with the ball and create an issue, i.e. Ross Barkley, ironically. But we've got competent players there that can do a job. Going forward, we are toothless at the moment. We are absolutely toothless. And that can't continue. Now, usually, you would look and you would go, okay, well, we're toothless, so we need to go into the transfer market when it opens, and we need to bring in a player. We weren't able to do that for financial reasons and everything else that's going on at the football club. So somebody needs to step up. Now, I remember sitting here last January, December, having the exact same conversation when we hadn't signed a player in January. We hadn't brought a striker in, and I was sitting there thinking, I don't know who's going to step up and be that man. It was Dwight McNeil, thankfully, and he managed to do it. Abdoulaye Doucoure chipped in, and we managed to stay in the Premier League. Absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Season before, we all sat here and said, who's going to step up? It was Richarlison. I am unsure of who that will be this season. And one thing's for sure is the current attack, in the way that it is performing, won't score enough goals to win us enough games to keep us in the Premier League this season. I'm not saying they won't be able to do it, but their levels are going to have to improve drastically. I'm talking about Dwight McNeil, I'm talking about Jack Harrison, I'm talking about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Their levels are going to have to increase, because we can't rely on corners into the box every single week. We've just seen Everton have taken a point from Spurs at the weekend there, and our biggest threat, I'll admit, our biggest threat on that day was corners into the box, putting a man on the goalkeeper, creating a lot of pressure for him, and putting the ball into a dangerous area. Ultimately, we scored both goals from that situation, and we looked our biggest threat in that situation. And you're already having people in the media and people on podcasts talking about how the rules need to be changed because that's not fair on goalkeepers and it puts too much pressure on goalkeepers. Firstly, I think that's utterly bollocks. Utterly bollocks. I mean, if we're getting to the point now where you can't even stand next to a goalkeeper, if he jumps up and falls over you, then that's his own prerogative, isn't it? You know, it's like the conversation. I had a conversation on Twitter yesterday about Everton's equaliser, and so many people talking to me about why it took so long for it to be checked by VAR, defending VAR. about why it was taken. It took so long to be checked for the VAR check, but you can tell within 0.2 milliseconds of watching the goal that it comes off Romero's head. And the rule directly states that if a ball is played deliberately by a defender, the attacker is no longer deemed offside. And Romero jumps off of his feet to head the ball. So he's making a deliberate attempt. It's not just hit him, it's not deflected off him. He has jumped to try and head the ball away, and he's made contact, and it's fell to Jared Branthwaite. You could tell within 5 seconds, before the celebrations had even ended, you could tell that was a legit goal, and yet we still were waiting for a minute and a half after it before we found out why. Well, they were checking whether Seamus Coleman was offside because he put pressure on Romero. Is that what we're at? Is that what we're at now, are we? Is that where we're at? Are we at that stage of VAR checking if a player who hasn't touched the ball or had any direct involvement with the ball is offside because he might have put a bit of pressure on a player? Is that going to be every week now? If Doucoure scores next week, are they going to check whether or not Nathan Patterson's offside because he might have put a bit of pressure on their winger, which might have meant that he wasn't able to get back and help? Is that really where we are now with it? But yeah, as I said before, sorry, I digressed a little bit there. I'm not sure who that is going to be. And it's okay to sit here and say, well, Doucoure will be back and Doucoure will be fit in due course, etc., etc. Abdoulaye Doucoure's in his 30s now. Injuries and knocks and things that keep him out of the team for 2-3 weeks, 4-5 weeks, maybe a month, aren't going to be, rare occurrences. Especially if he is being relied on as much as he is, because he's the most important player to this Everton side. And we can debate all day long who's been Everton's best player this season. I think Vitaly Mykolenko is well worth a shout. I think there's a couple of players who have had really good seasons so far. But there is, for me, feel free to have your opinion. This is all an opinion-based show. It's an opinion-based podcast, of course. But for me, or I shouldn't say podcast because it's not a podcast, an opinion-based YouTube channel. But for me, there isn't another player in this squad that is as important as Abdoulaye Doucoure. And I'll tell you for why. Because if Everton want to stay up this season, we've got to start winning games of football. For Everton to win games of football, we've got to start scoring goals. For Everton to score goals, we need players that are capable of putting the ball in the back of the net. And at the moment, Abdoulaye Doucoure is literally the only player that seems like he's capable of doing that on a consistent basis. Now, I will give Jack Harrison his credit, and the Blues will be surprised here because he knows I'm not a huge fan of Jack Harrison in terms of his output and his quality, but I will give him credit. He works hard and he tries. Now, I think his goal against Fulham is a perfect example of why, even if players aren't confident and even if players aren't necessarily in the best of form, sometimes you've just got to have a go. His goal against Fulham, let's be honest, was an absolute howler of a mistake by the goalkeeper. But if he doesn't, sorry, it wasn't Fulham, was it? Was it Luton? Luton, sorry, in the cup. It was Luton, wasn't it? It wasn't Fulham. It was a howler of a mistake by the goalkeeper. But if he doesn't take that shot, we don't score that goal, and ultimately, we don't get back into that game. Now, I know we didn't go on and win it anyway, but if he doesn't take that shot, take that chance, even though it was a poor shot and it was a huge goalkeeping error, then we don't get back into that game. So fair play to him for getting his head up and having a go and, trying to create stuff. And that's what we need more of from the wingers and the forwards. We need more of them just getting the ball in a good area and thinking, do you know what, I'm going to let fly. You'll never see me come on here and have a go at a player for shooting from outside the box. You'll never, ever, ever see me do it. Ever. I might have a little bit of a joke about it if it's someone like Garner Gay, who, by the way, was absolutely outstanding on Saturday. But we all know, more often than not, when he has a shot outside the box, it lands in the stands. But you'll never see me sitting here having a go at them because the whole aim of a game of football is to score goals, and you will only score goals if you have shots at goal. And I know we're having shots at goal at the moment, and I get that, but I'll never moan about us shooting. And I'm not necessarily worried about the lack of attempts we're having on goal. I'm worried about the quality. As the Blues says, Abdoulaye Doucoure is that important to Everton. Let me read you a stat, which I believe is true. Somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's true. Abdoulaye Doucoure signed for Everton in September of 2020. So just over 3 years ago, 3 and a bit years ago. Everton have won only 4 games of football when Abdoulaye Doucoure has not been in the side. So when Abdoulaye Doucoure has not been in the side, Everton have only won 4 times in nearly 4 years. Every other game of football we've won, he has been in the side. So that just shows you how integral he is to the way we play. He mightn't be the most technically gifted footballer we've ever seen. He mightn't be, the quickest or the best passer of a ball or the best decision maker. But what he is absolutely categorically and obviously vital to Sean Dyche's philosophy of winning games of football for Everton. Because when he isn't there, we don't win. It's very, very, very simple. It's not, for me, it's very easy to see. The likelihood of us winning a game of football with Abdoulaye Doucoure in is intensely higher than it is without Abdoulaye Doucoure in. And that just shows you how important he is. Whether he's technically unbelievable, whether he's a great passer, whatever he is, he's always in the right place to put the ball in the back of the net. Now, we can't go out and buy another Abdoulaye Doucoure now. We can't, because the transfer window's closed. The only players we could get now are free agents, and they're very unlikely to come in and have an impact. And we're not looking at free agents anyway, as far as I'm concerned. There you go. 3 league wins without him since signing. Cup game wasn't included in the stats. So even worse, 3 league wins in nearly 4 years when he's not been in the team. What I think the manager needs now to do is almost... Now, this might sound like an absolute wild suggestion, and you might think, yeah, Campbell, who does this? Who fits into that role? Who adopts that role? I don't know. And this might be a wild suggestion, but without this, I think we're leaving it to hope that Dominic Calvert-Lewin or Jack Harrison or Dwight McNeil are all of a sudden overnight going to just turn into, fantastic players and start scoring goals consistently. I don't think that's going to happen, and that's a very big risk. I also think it's a huge risk to expect Abdoulaye Doucoure to remain fit from when he comes back until the end of the season. So is it a silly idea to suggest that the manager almost moulds one of the current players into what Abdoulaye Doucoure does? Now, I know you're never going to get an identical copy because they're not the same as Abdoulaye Doucoure, but what I'm saying is take somebody like Danjuma, take somebody like, I don't know, Lewis Dobbin or one of the younger lads or whoever it might be, and just say to them, right, I want you, forget playing on the wing, forget trying to take players on, forget trying to whip balls into the box. I want you to play like him. I want you to do what he does. See, when he runs into the box and where he stands in the box, I want you to stand in that exact same place when you're playing. I want you to be on the end of on the end of any loose balls that drop. I want you to be driving into the box when we're on the counter-attack. I want you to do exactly what he does. And almost, not an understudy as such, but yeah, effectively an understudy. So that we're not in desperate need of Abdoulaye Doucoure. Because at the moment, we are so reliant on him that even the stats will tell you when he isn't involved in a matchday squad, the likelihood of Everton winning is not very high. Now, I know we're in a bit of a weird situation at the moment with the points deduction, and obviously the appeal process is either ongoing or is being completed now, and we're waiting for some form of decision. Now, that decision might be, bang, you've got your 10 points back, and I might be sitting here on that live stream saying, boss, don't need to worry about relegation sound, let's just get our heads down, crack on. It mightn't be. Again, I don't want to gossip. I don't want to create suspicion. I don't know anything. All I know is that there's a lot more in the media about it now and about the potential of Everton getting the 10 points back, whereas it wasn't even spoken about prior. Obviously, we know Super Silk was there on Saturday with a huge smile on his face. Now, he won't know the outcome either, by the way, so he might think he's absolutely wiped the floor with them, and then he might get a phone call saying, yeah, you lost. So, but the fact he was there with a huge smile on his face, for me, is a positive sign, I suppose. I'm not trying to reach here. I'm just looking for signs. And slightly off topic, but the Premier League are looking to employ more legal people to help them get to the bottom of a couple of cases because there's a deadline they have to face and they currently don't look like they're going to meet it. So there you go. Yeah, but we may get the 10 points back. And we may be sitting here saying, wow, what a mad few weeks that was where we were worrying about relegation. Oh, well, let's move on. But we mightn't. And, I said this last week. I've done numerous live streams. I've done numerous videos. I've spoken about the points deduction so many times that I'm not going to talk about it now until the result of the appeal process is revealed. As soon as we know what that result is, we'll be live and we'll be discussing it one way or another. But I can't sit here and say, well, everything's fine because we're going to get our 10 points back, because we mightn't. And being the pessimistic Evertonian that I am, my assumption is we probably won't, because it's Everton, and when does anything ever go for us? But yeah, I just think there needs to be, the manager needs to find that solution to the Abdoulaye Doucoure shaped problem, because it is without a shadow of a doubt his biggest issue at the moment. Defensively, he's sorted it. Away from home, we've got a way of playing, we've got a style of playing. But even away from home without Abdoulaye Doucoure, I mean, this may be, this is an if but maybe situation, and you could never say for sure. But I'm fairly confident with Abdoulaye Doucoure in that team, we'd have beaten Fulham last week. I'm fairly confident in saying that. I'm fairly confident, in fact, we would have beaten Spurs with Abdoulaye Doucoure in that team just before Christmas. In fact, let me just double check he wasn't in that team before I absolutely embarrass myself. No, he wasn't, was he? Because Andre Gomez played in his position. I'm fairly confident in saying we would have at least got a result at Spurs if Abdoulaye Doucoure was in that team. And the point is because those are both games similar to this one on Saturday, where the teams were there for the taking and were exploitable and weren't offering much, but we just couldn't exploit them. We just couldn't create chances. We just couldn't, expose their poor day at the office. And that's where it's not frustration with the manager. It's not frustration with the players. It's more just a little bit of disappointment. And, Everton may stay up by 2 points this season, and we might look and go, well, what a huge 2 points they were against Fulham and Spurs. We may do. But I just think, imagine how what 6 points would have done. And there was every chance we could have got 6 points. By the way, the suggestion that Everton should have got 6 points from the last 2 games isn't anywhere near as wild as some people will suggest. Absolutely isn't anywhere near as wild as some people will suggest. So that is my biggest worry at the moment, is how the manager now, with no transfer market, with no ability to go and sign a player, how he manages to cope without Abdoulaye Doucoure. And I think the only way he can do that is by having someone fill his role, to a similar level that he does it when he's in there. Because we've tried the different formations and we've tried the different systems and this, that, and the other, and it's fine, it works defensively. But I think most systems Sean Dyche tries will work defensively, because he is a defensive manager and he knows how to set teams up to be hard to beat and to be strong in the tackle and to be, in your face and this, that, and the other. And B, he's got a really, really solid, consistent set of defenders there, barring the right-hand side, who obviously we've seen a lot of change in there. But when everybody is fit in that back line, he's got Mikalenko, who's arguably been our player of the season. He's got Branthwaite, who's been another one of our player of the season. He's got Tarkowski there, who's been fantastic. And he's got Seamus Coleman there, who's the club captain and has been absolutely brilliant. So the back line isn't a worry. The problem is in those other formations and everything the manager's tried is we've never really got the most out of the attacking players, and that is where he has to work now, and that's where my worry is, because I just don't know how he's going to get the most out of them. I don't know how we're gonna have an attacking side where without Doucoure in, when Doucoure's in there and he's fit, fine. I don't think many Blues would have a problem with it, but when he's not there, there's a real big problem, and that is quite evident. And it was quite evident on Saturday, although it was a good point. It was a big point. It was an important point. It was a game we could have won had we have been better going forward, had we have had more quality. And I get it, by the way. I know loads of people and the conversation at the moment is really geared towards Ross Barkley. I get it. He's doing really well at Luton at the moment. They're doing really well. He's had a fantastic start to his career there. I get it. Everton could have and probably should have, in hindsight, gone out and got him in the summer. One thing I would say is there's a lot of talk about Ross Barkley at the moment, and as I said before, hindsight is a wonderful, wonderful thing, and Ross has been brilliant for Luton this season, and obviously looking back, yes, he would be absolutely fantastic in this team. He would be exactly what we needed. He would be perfect in this team, 100%, I agree. And should we have probably gone and got him in the summer? Absolutely, we should have gone and got him in the summer. However, it's not like Ross has had 3-4 years consistently in the Premier League, and then Luton have gone and picked him up on a free, and he's doing exactly what he's been doing for the last 3-4 years. It's not quite as easy as that, and I get it now. We're all looking back, and I'm not saying I wouldn't have him, and I'm not saying the club shouldn't have gone for him, because generally, really, the club should have gone for any player that was going to come in on a free, cost low wages, and have some form of impact on the squad in any sort. Everton should have been looking directly in that market. So I'm not having a go at him, or having a go at anybody that thinks we've made a mistake there. I agree. Everton should have been looking in that market. However, I think it's important to not rewrite history, and the history isn't that Ross has been a consistently, Premier League player for the last 5-6 years and has always been at this level, and all of a sudden Luton have come in, brought him in, and he's now continuing at that level, and everyone's looking going, wow, why didn't we get him in? The reality is he was at Nice last year. How many of us watched him at Nice? I can honestly tell you I watched nothing of him. I think, a couple of his goals he may have scored in replays, but I didn't watch a single game of football he played in France, and the French League is completely different to the Premier League. And the last time he was in the Premier League, he was at an Aston Villa side that weren't doing particularly well, was struggling, and didn't want to sign him at the end of his loan because he'd had a couple of good games, but he'd had a huge injury in the middle of the season, and he wasn't able to keep up with the physicality and the pace of the Premier League. So I don't think it's as easy as, oh my God, Everton are so stupid to not bring him in. Should we have looked at him and maybe addressed them more? I think as soon as you give the opinion of, well, he hasn't really played in the Premier League for a while, and the last time he was here, he struggled to get in a team that was struggling and they didn't want him, and you mix and he's got a bad relationship with Evertonians, and there's a lot of Evertonians that wouldn't welcome him back, I think it pretty much answers your question. Everton were wrong to do that, because Everton should have completely put aside the relationship with Evertonians and just focused solely on the pros and cons of bringing him in as a player. And I think had they have done that, they probably would have made that move, because the pros would have outweighed the cons, because the pros where you'd get another member of the squad coming in on very low wages for basically nothing, on a contract that you could give him, where if he doesn't do well enough, he can go at the end of the season. So I get it, and I understand it, but I also understand why we didn't go for him, because there was absolutely no guarantee he was going to do what he's done so far this season. And fair play to him, he's got his head down, he's focused, he's done it. Would he be as focused at Everton, as he is as Luton? I don't know. Who knows? Back home in the city, playing for this boyhood club, maybe he'd be more focused. Maybe the attention and the drama would go to his head. I'm not talking about Chelsea, by the way, Michael. I'm talking about Villa. When he went on loan to Villa, I'm not talking about his time at Chelsea. So, yeah. Anyway, it is what it is. Ross Barkley would have been perfect in that Doucoure role, and we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation, but he's not here, so, and he won't be here probably again. Certainly, definitely, 100% not before the summer. So, yeah, we have to move away from the Ross Barkley conversation, but I definitely take it on board. But yeah, I thought other than the opening 10 minutes on on Saturday, I thought we played well in the first half. I thought we were asleep in the opening 10 minutes, obviously conceding that first goal, and it very much had the feeling of a 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday, where the majority of the players seemed like they were still asleep, and like they were still just waking up and just getting ready for the day. And if you're not ready and concentrating and absolutely on it from the first minute, then you are susceptible, especially in against the better teams in the league. I mean, I watched Manchester City yesterday, and as soon as I seen they were 1-0 down to Brentford, and I'd put it on, tuned in. I was gonna say then, who do I think I am? I'd put it on like just before City had equalised, and I heard the commentator say something along the lines of City have been really dominant in this last 20 minutes, sort of, the more attacking side. And I turned around to my girlfriend and said, yeah, this is only a matter of time before, City absolutely wipe the floor with these. And the reason for that is because, and this is obviously very interesting given we play Manchester City on Saturday, but you can't just defend against Manchester. For you to be able to defend a 1-0 lead and beat Manchester City, you have to be absolutely pitch perfect. Everton weren't. Brentford weren't. They made one slight mistake, and Foden's on the end of it, and it's 1-1 all of a sudden. And then the minute it goes to 1-1, it's pretty much game over at that point, isn't it? So, it happened to us at Goodison Park. We made one little mistake. It went 1-1. Pickford showed a little bit more of the goal than he should have. Foden made us pay, and then we ended up going and losing the game of football. But my point is Spurs are also a side capable of hurting teams. When they're not concentrating, and when they're not particularly at the awake or aware of the situation and what's going on. And that is exactly what happened. Obviously the manager went with Ben Godfrey in there. He obviously went with Ashley Young in there a little bit further forward as well. No Doucoure, no Jack Harrison, no Doucoure, no Onana. Garner Gay was in there for the first time, obviously, since returning from AFCON, and I thought Idrissa Gana Gueye was absolutely outstanding, with obviously Jack Harrison in the 10. And yeah, we were asleep. We were caught sleeping in the opening moments of the game, and Richarlison made us pay for it. And we should know, shouldn't we? He was an Everton player for however many years, 4 or 5 years. We should know that when you give him an opportunity on the edge of the box, more often than not, he's going to put that ball in the back of the net, and he's going to make you pay for it. And that, for me, is exactly what happened. And it was disappointing, because it felt a little bit like the Man United game, in the sense that, we hadn't even got going. We hadn't even really got, the game kicked off, and all of a sudden Everton are 1-0 down. I mean, I can't quite remember when the goal was scored, 4th minute. So within the opening 4 minutes of the game, Everton are 1-0 down. But I thought we reacted really, really well to that. And I thought for the rest of the half, we were absolutely fantastic. We were creating opportunities. We were moving the ball forward. We were trying to get at them. We were putting them under pressure. And when I say fantastic, we obviously weren't fantastic, because, as we've just spoken about for half an hour, our biggest issue at the moment is the fact that we've not got enough quality going forward, or the players that are playing in those forward areas haven't got enough confidence. But we completely took the game away from Tottenham. We were getting forward. We were trying to create opportunities. We were putting the ball in the box. We had a couple of chances, that we probably should have done a little bit better with, that we couldn't. A couple of shots over the bar. I think McNeil had one that went just wide. Guy had one that went over the bar. The keeper made a couple of saves, and we'd had a couple of those corners that were really, really troubling Vicario. Now, again, I said this before and I'll say it again. Football is now at a stage where referees are checking goals for a minute, 2 minutes, because a player who may have been in an offside position may have had some impact on the movement of the ball, even though it didn't touch said player and he wasn't anywhere near the ball. So it doesn't surprise me that we're now in a position where there's a conversation about how Everton's first goal shouldn't have stood because of pressure on the goalkeeper. And for far too long in football, goalkeepers have been treated for me as some form of immovable object and untouchable presence. You know, we saw Manchester United's goalkeeper Onana come out in the opening weeks of the season. In fact, it might have been the opening game of the season, and completely flatten a Wolves player in the penalty area, and no penalty was given. And it was one of the most blatant penalties you'll ever see in your life. And that's because when a goalkeeper goes flattening into a player, either no foul is given or the goalkeeper wins the foul. And if a player goes into a goalkeeper, the goalkeeper wins the foul 100% of the time. Now, if you're going to make a rule where nobody can be within, I don't know, 2-3 yards of the goalkeeper, then again, we're in the danger of changing football that much that it just becomes, absolutely, completely polar opposite to the sport that we all grew up and loved, and you may as well give it a new name as well because it's nonsense. The reality is, as a goalkeeper, your job is to be strong. Your job is to be commanding. Your job is to be able to hold yourself up. And if you can't rely on your defenders to clear that ball, you should be able to get up and clear it. Now, obviously, there's cases where goalkeepers are fouled, where they're being held or where they're being obstructed, whatever. This wasn't one of them. This was an example of Tottenham's goalkeeper not being strong enough, not being decisive enough, not being confident enough and coming out and rushing his decision. He did that. Godfrey gets the ball back across, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin is so unlucky, isn't he? I mean, when it rains, it pours, and for Dom at the moment, it's almost certainly pouring down, isn't it? I mean, how unlucky do you get? How unlucky can one player get where, he's literally headed the ball towards an open goal and it's taking a deflection off one of his teammates and the goal is classed as one of his team. I remember seeing it. Obviously we all thought it was Dom's goal. Dom ran off celebrating, absolutely buzzing for Dom. Would have been his first goal in 16, 17 appearances, something like that. I looked at half time and I seen Jack Harrison with the goal next to his name in the ground, and I remember thinking, are we winning? Have I missed the goal? Have I somehow blinked and missed the goal? And it still says 1-1. It doesn't say 2-1. And then I looked at Dom's name and he didn't have a goal by his name. And I remember thinking, wow, it wasn't even like one of them scrappy situations where it could have been anyone that put it in and you're sort of thinking, okay, maybe I just got it wrong. It looked from my seat, bearing in mind I sit in the park end, so it was right in front of me, like Dominic Calvert-Lewin had just headed the ball into the back of the net. So I didn't quite understand it. You then go and see it in a replay, and Jack, again, I feel like everybody has different opinions on Jack. I like him as a player in terms of his effort, his work rate, his determination. I just don't think he's very good in terms of his output. But fair play to him. He scored a couple of goals of late that he's probably gone home after the game and gone, fucking hell, how have I been credited with that goal? The goal against Luton was an absolutely horrific goalkeeping mistake, and obviously that one was a complete bit of luck. And then you see the screenshot again, and Dom's gone in sort of full header, and Jack Harrison's almost jumping in the air to get out of it. But fair play to him. It was a goal, and it was coming as well. It was coming. We'd threatened from them corners a couple of times, and we'd given away a couple of fouls, but we'd shown that A, we're able to put pressure on the goalkeeper and put pressure on their defence, and B, McNeil had showed that he was capable of putting a really dangerous ball into that area for somebody to attack, and we'd looked the much better team for the remainder of that first half. And I remember thinking when it went to 1-1, right, okay, don't give anything silly up here, don't do anything stupid, don't make any silly mistakes, because this game is very much there for the taking. Tottenham, as I said, offered very little in my opinion, weren't doing much, weren't up to much. James Maddison wasn't up to much except throwing himself on the floor as usual. Brennan Johnson, I'm not even sure he touched the ball. Timo Werner wasn't up to much either. So the only real threat we had to worry about was Richarlison, and as I said in the player ratings yesterday, little bit disappointed with Ben Godfrey for both goals, because both goals come down that right-hand side, but very conflicted because Ben, for me, had his best game in an Everton shirt on Saturday, and yet still was culpable for the 2 goals that we conceded. So you're sort of sitting there scratching your head thinking, well, did he have a good game? Did he not have a good game? Well, he was responsible for the goals that we conceded, but also he has ultimately, he's played really well. He's defended well generally. He's got forward. He's put them under pressure. He's done a decent job. So, yeah, as I said, we equalise, moving the ball well, and then completely against the run of play. Again, almost not a carbon copy goal, but certainly a carbon copy situation to the first one. They get down that left-hand side. Ben can't cover the space. I thought Ashley Young was poor for both goals as well. I mean, again, I don't know at which point this becomes an instruction more so than a player's decision, and it's a little bit like the fact that neither fullback ever really go beyond their winger to create an overlap and run to put a cross in. I'm not quite sure that is a case of the fullbacks don't want to do it or don't feel like they're confident or capable of doing it, as much as it is an instruction from the manager to not do it. And this seemed a little bit like that, because I was watching Ashley Young on Saturday, and for both goals he doesn't sack his man. He completely just allows basically Ben Godfrey to do it all on his own. He doesn't move past the halfway line. And then I watched him when we were attacking, and he was working hard, he was running around, he was getting involved. And I remember thinking, has he been told to not get back and defend because it will knacker him out, or it will tire him out, or he won't have the stamina to get back and forth? So was he being told sort of, you just stay here and let them do that? Or as he just thought, I can't be arsed getting back and helping out. Whatever it was, we could have done with him being back in that, in those defensive areas, helping Ben Godfrey out, because he was exposed. And yeah, it come completely against the run of play, didn't it? Ball into the box. Richarlison is just on sort of the edge of the box. Loads of space, and the chaos is in, and probably one of his best goals he's scored in quite some time. Definitely his best goal for Spurs so far, and we go in 2-1 down, and I remember thinking at half time, there's still so much Everton can get from this game, because Spurs, as I said, we're offering very, very little. Both goals had come sort of against the run of play. I suppose the first one you could say wasn't, because it was in the opening 5 minutes, but certainly against the flow of the game. And Everton had opportunities to score goals and not taking them, and obviously we'd got back into it, and that's the most frustrating thing is, we'd got back into it with a really important goal, and then we'd completely threw it away, 10 minutes later, just before half time. And so yeah, I remember thinking, we can come out here and we can get at them, and if we get an early goal, if we get an equaliser in the first sort of 5-10 minutes of the second half, then there's every chance we can go on and win it. I was really disappointed with the second half performance. I was really, really disappointed with it, because not through a lack of effort, not through a lack of desire, not through a lack of determination, but I just feel like they were there for the taking, and we made it very comfortable for them in that second half. I don't think Tottenham were ever really focusing on going and extending their lead. Don't get me wrong, I think obviously they would have had the chance, but I think from a Spurs point, it was more of a just don't concede an equaliser and just sort of settle this down and professionally see it out. But I thought then it was up to Everton, and it was the responsibility of Everton to get at them then and force them into making mistakes and force them into, gifting us chances. But as we spoke about for the opening 20 minutes of this team, we just don't have the quality to do that at the moment. And again, I bring Abdoulaye Doucoure's name back up because A, he's so important to this team, but also B, it specifically works in this conversation. Is I feel like had Abdoulaye Doucoure had been in the side in that second half, not only would we have equalised quicker, but I think we would have gone on and won the game. I do. because he offers so much. He offers so much more than anybody else does. He's so much of a goal threat. He's so awkward to deal with. He's so much more confident than everybody else is in the team at the moment. That was where my disappointment come. It didn't come from conceding in the opening 5 minutes. It didn't come from, conceding just before half time to Richarlison. It come from that lack of quality, because it felt like I was watching an opposition team that were effectively saying, come and get at us, we're here for the taking, and Everton were just like, we just can't, and it was really, really frustrating and really annoying. Obviously, we made Beto comes on, Dobbin comes on, and to be fair, the subs did change the game. They injected a little bit more pace into it. They injected a little bit more intensity into it. Jack Harrison had a good moment in the second half where he goes one-on-one. I think it was with Romero or Van de Ven, and he just gets out, barged off the ball again. We talk about lack of quality in terms of actual ability, but lack of football and nous and presence either. There's, not every footballer ever has been blessed with pace. Some of the best footballers ever to have existed haven't had a lot of pace. However, what they've had is they've had a good footballing brain and a good footballing IQ to know that, right, because I haven't got pace, I've got to use my other strengths to create opportunities as opposed to relying on that pace. And I just don't think Jack is at that level. Obviously he isn't, because he wouldn't be at Everton if he was, but again, I think that showed it. He's trying to outpace somebody that he knows he's not going to outpace, instead of cutting it back or coming across him, so he's got to foul him. All he had to do was cut his run that way, and the defender would have had to have come across him and either leave him or foul him. And as I said, we got at them, we pressed, we had a couple of moments where we looked like we were threatening, and then we get that free kick. Ball comes in, Romero jumps, leaps, heads it on, and Jared Brandtwaite's at the back post to nod it in, and Everton have managed to grab a point in circumstances where it didn't look like we would with 5 minutes to go, and a point that we not only thoroughly deserved, but, like I said, for me, had we have had more quality in the side. And I know that seems like such a Michael Owen thing to say, doesn't it? If we have had better players, we may have won the game. Well, yeah, obviously, but it's not even like I'm saying, had we have had a whole new front line, we may have won the game. What I'm saying is, even if one of those four that play across the front line, including Beto, Dom, Harrison, McNeil, even if one of them was in a decent bit of form, I think we'd have won that game. It just so happens that a lot of them at the moment they all are absolutely, they're just not on it. They're just not on it at the moment. I'm not saying they never will be. I'm not saying they never have been. As I said before, McNeil's form last season was why we're still a Premier League side, in my opinion. But this season, he's just not on it. But we get the goal. Brilliant goal, as I said. Good cross in, and a really good header by Jared Brandtwaite. Really good anticipation from Jared as well, and a really good assist by Richarlison. And I wasn't very happy when I seen certain members of the crowd clapping Richarlison for whatever it was, not celebrating or bowing or apologising, whatever it was. I wasn't really happy with people clapping when Everton had conceded the goal. Don't get me wrong, each to their own, do what you want, but that for me just doesn't quite work. However, given he basically allowed Jared Brandtwaite to run off him and nod in the equaliser, yeah, fair play, clap him all you like. Shout out to Seamus Coleman, by the way. What a boss picture that was, to see Seamus Coleman just screaming in the face of Romero, who was trying to talk shite all afternoon, moaning at the referee, whining, whinging. But yeah, we got a point out of it, and yeah, in hindsight, a decent point. But just again, for me, if we played Manchester City on Saturday and they were horrendous, and we hit the bar 5 times and we hit the post 10 times, and we had 5 one-on-ones and we missed all of them, and City were horrific and we had 48 shots on target, even though we'd played Manchester City, and if we drew that game, even though we'd played Manchester City and we'd got a point at the Etihad, we'd probably be sitting here a bit disappointed, wouldn't we, that we hadn't got more. That is a little bit how I feel about Saturday. I know Saturday we didn't have all them shots on target or whatever, but I just feel like with a bit more quality, we could have won the game. And yeah, again, just a little bit down about it. But yeah, a point is a point. Special shout out to James Garner. I thought worked hard. Special shout out to Jared Branthwaite, who I thought was very good. Ben Godfrey, who I thought had, as I said, one of his better games in an Everton shirt, and Garner Guy, who I thought was absolutely outstanding and looked like a completely new player, looked like a refreshed player, a re-energized player from obviously coming back from the African Cup of Nations. He was absolutely outstanding, and yeah, hopefully he can continue that form. So there you go. We're going to leave it there. If you have enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It does only take a second. We'll be back over the next couple of days with another video. I'm assuming that, we'll have some form of something to talk about regarding the points deduction or the FFP, whatever it might be. There'll be something to talk about over the next few days. I'm not saying the results will come out, by the way. I haven't got a clue when the results will come out. This just seems to be news daily about the situation, so we'll talk about that. Yeah, there you go. If you've enjoyed it, please hit the like button. It does only take a second. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Big thank you all for watching, and we'll see you after.